RTN. Worked all week with the world on my shoulders, running on empty, getting a little older. Noise in my head, but I'm looking for truth. There's something steady I can hold on to. So I opened up the pages, let the light come through. Ancient words, but they feel brand new. Come as you are, bring your questions, bring your scars. There's a kind of hope that meets you where you are. When you need a voice that won't pretend, let the word speak again. It's a word for the weekend on RTN. Bread for the road when the week's been heavy and the heart feels cold. From the first let there be to the stone rolled away, same God, same love, still making a way. So open it up, let the truth rush in. Come get a word for the weekend on RTN. I've seen peace walk in when the room was shaking. I've seen strongholds fall and new hearts waking. This ain't for the perfect, it's for the needing, for the worn out soul that's barely breathing. Grace in the lines, mercy in the sound. A living hope when you're feeling run down. Come as you are, bring your questions, bring your scars. There's a kind of hope that meets you where you are. When you need a voice that won't pretend, let the word speak again. It's a word for the weekend on RTN. Bread for the road when the week's been heavy and the heart feels cold. From the first let there be to the stone rolled away, same God, same love, still making a way. So open it up, let the truth rush in. Come get a word for weekend on RTN. 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 Speak, Lord, we're listening now. Light up the dark, turn us around. Every promise true, every mercy new. You're the anchor when the winds blow through. It's a word for the weekend on RTN. Bread for the road when the week's been heavy and the heart feels cold. From the first let there be to the stone rolled away, same God, same love, still making a way. So open it up, let the truth rush in. Come get a word for the weekend on RTN. Let the word speak again. Word for the on RTN.
Blessings in Jesus, dear friends. My name is James Jacob Prasch from Moriel Ministries, coming to you here on RTN, Word for the Weekend. Thank you so much for joining us this holiday season. Hanukkah's just about over. We're coming very close to Christmas and to the secular New Year. Everyone is, of course, focused on these things, and we shall be addressing them momentarily. Our documentary, Why This Time is Different, is now available on Vimeo, and it deals with the issue, why is this time in history different than the other times in history when Christians thought it was the close of the age and that Jesus was coming? A number of times throughout history, believers thought he was coming even in their lifetime, and they were wrong and wrong and wrong. They looked at the events of their day, saw them as being of prophetic importance, and actually believed Jesus was returning soon. But they were left in disappointment, disillusionment. Why is this time different? Is there anything that makes this time different than the other times in history when Christians, even some very dedicated and biblically based Christians, believed or at least strongly suspected it was the close of the age and Christ was coming soon? Why is this time different? That is the film available on Vimeo. Why This Time is Different. Please avail yourself of it. In the meantime, here on RTN, we have a variety of platforms and features. We have Christian TV and radio online. We also have podcasts, social media, and we have a range of Christian speakers, authors, evangelists, Bible expositors, and I must say, some very Christ-honoring worship music. Please tell your friends, family, church mates, neighbors about the ministry of RTN. At RTN, we say we are here for the Lord. We are here to reach the unsaved with the gospel, and we are here for you. We do not ask for money or financial support. We do ask for prayer. Those wishing to support the ministry may do so through the RTN website. However, while we do not ask for money, we do very much ask for prayer. We want to proclaim the message of Jesus and his salvation and the time we have left to us before he comes. Once again, welcome to RTN. The holiday season, the Christmas holiday season. Holidays themselves are strange things. I'm in the United States at the moment, and it is incredible how holidays become something very different than what they were initially intended to be, and how they become so different, how they mutate, mainly because of commercial reasons. Let's look at it. Thanksgiving was a feast. It was a feast that celebrated God's goodness and its focus by the pilgrims who escaped the persecution of King James in England. Yes, King James persecuted Christians. King James, the same King James of the authorized version of the Bible, was an incredible persecutor of nonconformists, of born-again Christians, of Puritans. The Puritans, of course, later became persecutors of others. Nonetheless, they came to the United States. Many died, many suffered, but the survivors found a new beginning in a new land, and they wanted to thank God for his provision to them. So they had Thanksgiving. That was the idea of Thanksgiving. Let's give thanks to God for his goodness, for his blessing, for the food. Food to them was a serious issue. They faced the prospect of starvation. That happened in Jamestown, the first British settlement in the United States that was permanent in Virginia. That happened also at Roanoke Island, which disappeared in the times of Walter Raleigh. And it happened in colonial Massachusetts. So they wanted to give God thanks for the food. They were going to survive. Let's thank God. That was Thanksgiving. That was Thanksgiving. Now, Thanksgiving is simply the launch of the Christmas shopping season. There's a big parade in New York with these big balloons of cartoon characters, and a parade, and then Santa Claus is at the end of the parade. And the department stores, the cash registers are ringing. It is the commencement of the shopping season. They call it Thanksgiving. People watch football games, but it's a food fest. It's a food fest. It's a day when people watch usually college football and American football, not to be confused with soccer. And it begins the shopping season for Christmas. It has nothing to do with thanking God, almost. Practically nothing to do with it. Practically nothing. That's just the history of it. Well, in America, they have something called Memorial Day. So many people, so many troops were killed in World War I and World War II, fighting the Japanese and the Nazis. That cemeteries filled up, veteran cemeteries, military cemeteries. They wanted to have a national day of memorial for all of these guys. Some of them were buried in the shores of Normandy in France. Some of their remains were repatriated to Arlington, Virginia, and so forth. They wanted to have a day of memorial, remembering those who gave their lives defending freedom and putting an end to the Nazis and the Imperial Japanese and so forth. That was the meaning, the purpose of making Memorial Day a legal holiday. Well, today, Memorial Day weekend is the beginning of the summer vacation and holiday season. Yeah, there might be a Memorial Day parade, and there might be some veterans organizations or organizations of war widows who'd go down to military graveyards or go to cemeteries where veterans killed in the war their remains were interred, and they put little flags and maybe a wreath on the headstone and a little flag on the grave. They do that. But most people don't even think about that. They might watch a parade, but they don't watch the parade with any sense of memory or gratitude for those who gave their lives. No, it's a parade, marching bands. It's the celebration of the summer vacation season. The resorts are open. They're all open. The West Coast, the East Coast, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, Florida, the New Jersey Shore, Malibu, California, Laguna Beach, California, Maui in Hawaii, Puerto Rico. It is the vacation season from Cape Cod all the way to Key West, from the Puget Sound all the way to San Diego. It is the vacation season. I suppose nobody even asks the question, hardly. Aren't we supposed to be remembering with gratitude those who gave their lives for the country and to defend our freedom from dictators like Hitler? I don't think about that. Oh. Then there's Labor Day. Labor Day. Labor Day was supposed to be the non-communist world or non-communist America's response to May Day, a workers' holiday that was not based on communism. It was, in fact, non-communist economies that gave the highest standard of living to the workers. Marx was wrong. Workers of the world unite. Well, people in Britain and America unionized. They united. But although there were people who tried to make it communistic, like Arthur Scargill in Britain, or those who tried to make unions an organized criminal racket, like Jimmy Hoffa in the United States, who was in bed with the mafia. There were people who were bad and who did those things. But basically, the workers in the non-communist world had a higher standard of living than the workers in the communist world, which the Soviets and Mao used to say was a workers' paradise. Workers of the world unite. Mao Zedong. Even in the aftermath of the Second World War, China was devastated by what the Japanese did. The Japanese wreaked absolute havoc on a magnitude that, at least numerically, exceeded things what the Nazis did. Like what the Nazis did to Warsaw, the Japanese did to Nanking in China. And they just wreaked havoc in Asia the way the Nazis did in Europe. So it was all this communism, and Mao came, and although he was Chinese, instead of following Confucianism, he followed Western communism, Marxism, Leninism, workers of the world unite. Even in the devastation of the Second World War, by the time Mao died in the 1970s, the average Chinese worker was more impoverished than they were in 1949. Just think, the 1950s, the 1960s, into the 1970s. After about 30 years of Mao, nearly 30 years of Mao, the workers in China were more impoverished than they were before Mao got power from Chiang Kai-shek in the late 1940s. No, Venezuela, Cuba, anywhere the communists go and they promise that they're the party of the people and the workers, the opposite happens. They're worse than the capitalists they hate. So the alternative to this May Day thing was to be Labor Day, first weekend in September. After that, the kids would go back to school in America and other countries, but America. What is Labor Day now? The same as Memorial Day is the opening weekend of the summer vacation and tourism season for holidays and things of this nature. Labor Day is the close of it. It's the last big weekend before the weather begins to get colder. It's just about commerce, tourism, leisure industry, hotels, hospitality industry, just about business. It's not about gratitude to the workers who built the country and maintain it. It's not about dead veterans who died defending the country. Not only that, the more holidays you get commemorating something, the less the holidays mean. You denigrate it. After World War I, which was the worst war that the world had seen up until that time in Britain and in America in terms of numbers of troops killed, every town in England, every village, just about has a memorial to the Great War or wars. And it lists the families and the people who were killed in the wars. And you see that it was only the Holocaust and the civilian casualties and the Blitz in London and Coventry and Liverpool that made the Second World War worse than the first. More British troops were killed in the First World War than the Second World War. I used to live in Surrey, England, near Brookwood Cemetery. It's the biggest military cemetery in the world. You wouldn't believe it. Droves and droves and droves. Whole families, fathers, sons, brothers, wiped out in the First World War. In the United States, when it was over, they had a holiday to honor those who fought in the war and died in the war. And that's where they got the tombs of the unknown soldiers. Well, Armistice Day is all but forgotten. It's not even celebrated anymore. The president goes to Arlington Cemetery and puts a memorial wreath on the tomb of the unknown soldiers, and there's a 30-second news clip of him doing it on the evening news, and that's it. When you have an Armistice Day and a Memorial Day, they detract, they dilute the meanings. Another was what's now called President's Day. There used to be two presidential holidays in February. The 22nd was the birthday of George Washington, a national holiday, and the 12th, Abraham Lincoln's birthday. The great emancipator. Well, Washington's birthday, that commercialized really quickly. The department store chains would take the merchandise that they produced for Christmas but didn't sell, and they would take all the returns and stuff like that from the aftermath of the Christmas holiday shopping, and they'd have a George Washington's birthday sale, and they would sell the stuff cheap. People was just waiting for it. Were they remembering George Washington, the father of the country, the first president? No, 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 no. It was a holiday. They didn't have to go to work, but the people in the department stores did. It's when they unloaded the surplus merchandise. You get deals, you get breaks. In fact, there were people in the United States, very consumer oriented. Instead of a Christmas present, you'd give people a gift certificate, a voucher. And instead of buying something for them for Christmas, they keep the voucher, the gift certificate, and then they'd go to Sears and Roebuck or Macy's or whatever on George Washington's birthday to get the same stuff 25, 30% cheaper. It was just about money. That's all. That's all. But then Abraham Lincoln, the great emancipator, the worst thing they did was dilute the history of emancipation and the abolition of slavery. How do they dilute it? Simple. You got 3 holidays now. You've got Lincoln's birthday, which is merged into President's Day. That dilutes it. Then you have Martin Luther King Day. And then you have something called Juneteenth. 3 holidays about the same thing. It just dilutes the meaning. Like Memorial Day and Armistice Day. It dilutes the meaning. In England, there's Christmas and then there's Boxing Day. It dilutes the meaning. The more days you have commemorating the same thing, the more diluted the meaning becomes until the holiday has nothing whatsoever to do with the holiday. It has nothing whatsoever to do, practically, with what it's supposed to be about. Unlike the Americans with Memorial Day and Armistice Day, the British have been a little bit better because they have Remembrance Day and they have the monarch putting the memorial tribute at the Cenotaph on Whitehall in London. And people will go to church and things like that traditionally. The British have been a little bit more better about the war dead, but it's the same thing. The same thing. These days have nothing to do with what they're supposed to be about. Nothing. Practically nothing. Something nominal, perhaps. That is a tradition or a custom, but it has nothing to do with the real meaning, the way most people observe it or celebrate it. Nothing. It's just a day I don't have to go to work today and I'm getting paid for it. That's what it is. We'll have a barbecue. We'll go to the beach, go to the parade, watch the game. That's what it is. This is unfortunate. But none of it comes close to what's been done with Christmas and Easter. Peter Cottontail, instead of the risen Lord, and Father Christmas, as he's known in Britain, Santa Claus, as he's known in the United States, instead of Jesus. It's not about the Nativity. Everybody knows it's not about the Nativity. How did this happen? Well, let's begin with Santa Claus. Saint Nicholas. Nikolaus. Now, Nico is victory or conquer. And Laos comes from laity. We get the word laity, people. It is the same essential Greek root meaning of the deeds of the Nicolaitans, Nikolaite, Nikolaos. It could be translated, however, one of two main ways. The conqueror, or the one who has victory over the people, or the victor, the conqueror for the people, the people's champion, as it were. And in Greek thought, originally, Nicholas is Greek, it was associated with Hercules. Hercules, in Greek mythology, was the son of the great god Zeus, who the Romans identified with planet Jupiter, because it was the biggest planet. Zeus was the big god. And Hercules had a divine father and an earthly mother, like Jesus. And instead of Mount Zion, it was Mount Olympus, and so forth. He was the champion of the people. Only Hercules was half human and half divine. Jesus was not 50-50. Jesus was 100 and 100. He was 100% human and 100% divine, fully God and fully man. Unfortunately, it was the idea of Hercules more than the idea of Jesus that framed the forerunner of what we know as Santa Claus or Father Christmas. Champion of the people. And the Herculean tradition, somewhat. For this, we may thank the Eastern Orthodox Church, in part. In any event, who was he, the real Santa Claus? We have no document about him. We do have somewhat verifiable, somewhat authenticated early historical traditions concerning him. The rest was mythologized later on. But for him himself, he was born in Lycia. Lycia is an area south of Ephesus on the Turkish coast, but in the year 270, the 3rd century, when he was born, it was Greek. Lycia. St. Paul visited Greek in the book of Acts, Lycia in the book of Acts. He visited the Greek cities of Lycia. And he came to a place called Myra, which was a port city. He was there, and his parents were wealthy, but they were Christians, and they raised him to be a Christian. Now, at this time, Christianity was still pre-Nicene. It had not yet been corrupted to a significant degree by the church fathers, particularly by the post-Nicene fathers. The church had not yet been corrupted. It was pre-Constantine. Nicholas, following the teachings of Jesus, sell what you have and give it to the poor, he did that. And he developed a reputation known for his kindness to the poor and his love of children. And it being a port town, he also had what seems to have been an evangelistic ministry among seamen, among sailors, when their ships would come into the port. Okay. He's a preacher or chaplain to sailors. He is known for his philanthropy, for his love of children, and for his aid to the poor, and for his faith. He became an episcopal. We get the word episcopal, bishop, Only bishop then does not mean the ridiculous religious fanfare nonsense with the Babylonian headdress you have now, with the mitre and all this kind of stuff. It was not that. Episcopo meant overseer. Epi around Scopus, overseer. He was a leader of the church in Lycia, in the area next region south down from Ephesus and so forth. The last major, and it was a brutal persecution of the church before Christianity was legalized. The last major persecution of the church in the Roman Empire was extremely cruel and extremely bloody. It was the persecution by the emperor Diocletian, a demon-possessed madman, a demonized madman. He was a brutal enemy of Christ who slaughtered Christians, who persecuted Christians. Nicholas was fortunate by God's hand to have survived. He was arrested and he was tortured and imprisoned. He was tortured and imprisoned for his faith. When he got out, he resumed his ministry, and it expanded, and he became again known for preaching to sailors and for his love of the poor and his love of children. Nobody can argue with a believer who preached the gospel, who cared for the poor, who loved children, and who was horribly persecuted and even tortured and imprisoned for his faith. Nobody can say anything bad about Nicholas. Nobody. I think he's probably a great guy. I look forward to meeting him. Now, how did St. Nicholas morph into this other figure we call Santa Claus? Nicholas probably participated in the Council of Nicaea after Constantine legalized Christianity. Bad things came out of Nicaea, but so did good things. The final canon of the New Testament, those books the apostles agreed were canonical, were formally established as canonical at Nicaea. And the heretic Arius was refuted by Anastasia. The historical tradition says that Nicholas was one of the episcopos who sided against the heretic Arius, who denied the deity of Christ. Jehovah's Witnesses are Arians. So, after he gets out of prison, after having been arrested and tortured, imprisoned, he resumes his ministry and he opposes heresy. Those things are probably to some degree true. It's difficult to get any firm documentation. After that, the rest becomes mythologized. Mysticism, superstition, the emergence of the Eastern Church, which would later split with the Roman Church. They were ascribing all kinds of miracles to him after he was dead, manna on his grave and all this kind of stuff. These are just folk tales, probably. You can't prove any of them. And because of his love for children and for the poor, they begin to say he's a patron saint. the patronage. This gets into the range now when necromancy gets into the church, where instead of there being one intercessor between God and man, Jesus the righteous, it becomes these dead saints, beginning, of course, with Mary, the mother of Christ. And there were patrons. Nicholas, get this, becomes the patron of repentant thieves and archers. How they got that, I don't know. But he becomes the patron saint of sailors. I can kind of understand that. And then, of all things, he becomes the patron saint of merchants and toy makers. Whoa. They make him the patron saint of merchants, people who sell stuff in shops, markets, and toy makers. Oh, boy. Notice it was a corruption of Christianity that paved the way for what followed. Holland became a turning point in the historical development of the legend of Father Christmas, of Santa Claus, of St. Nicholas, where he turned into Santa Claus, St. Claus, Nick Claus. Only in Holland, he was not associated with a sled or a sleigh or reindeer. And he didn't live on the North Pole. And he didn't have little elves as his helpers. No, instead, and it's still commemorated in Holland, he comes on a steamboat with his friend and colleague, a little black African guy called Pete. Pete, it was St. Nicholas and his friend Pete coming in on a steamboat. And the little kids would wait, like around Rotterdam, port area in Holland, the big port, Holland. And they still wait for him to come. And the little kids are watching for the steamboat to come. I can understand the boat because he was the patron saint of sailors. I don't know where they got Pete, but this was a turning point. Now, the Greek Orthodox celebrate his day the 19th of December by the old Julian calendar. The Western Church following the Gregorian calendar on the 9th of December. So it's in December, around the time of Christmas and Hanukkah. Now it begins to come together. The toy maker, patron saint of merchants, it's in December. These things take place in Holland. Then it gets into the English-speaking world, first the British, then the American. A turning point in England was the poem. It was the night before Christmas, and all through the house, not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. And that St. Nick was coming. That was pivotal. It was seminal in reinventing St. Nicholas as Santa Claus, as Father Christmas in England. And it makes its way to the other English-speaking countries, including the United States. By the time you get to the 20th century, oh boy, the Coca-Cola Company. It's interesting that manufacturers of cola, Coca, they were actually using first cocaine and then caffeine in the cola to make it a boost, a effervescent, a carbonated boosting drink. The government outlawed the cocaine and began controlling the caffeine content. For advertising purposes, the colors of the Coca-Cola company's logo was red and white. So to market and advertise their product, they had Santa Claus dressed up in the colors of their logo. And it permeated the United States and then to other countries. Before then, he wasn't associated necessarily with red. Sometimes it would be a goldish color, other places a greenish color, but it became red and white in the early 20th century. Patron saint of toy makers. Oh boy, Hasbro and Mattel, the toy manufacturers, Parker Brothers, everything, selling toys to kids. And was Santa Claus going to bring you a bicycle? Is Santa Claus going to bring you a Monopoly game? Whatever. Parcheesi, or whatever, Cluedo and all this. They began marketing using Santa Claus. Now, by the time this happens, this saint of God, who was imprisoned and tortured for his faith during the persecution of the demonized emperor Diocletian, means nothing. The guy was a Greek. He was from the Upper Levant. How he moved from Turkey to the North Pole, I don't know. How he got the sleigh and the reindeer, I don't know. In Lapland, northern Scandinavia, they simply began to do this because they had reindeer and snow all the time. So he began to mutate in these different countries along the line of their culture. Holland was a seafaring country at that time, and he had been a patron saint of sailors. And so he comes on a steamboat. Next thing you know, he got rid of the steamboat and he comes on a sleigh. And Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and all of these things, it has nothing to do with the actual man. Yeah, it's December. There was such a person, but he bears no resemblance to Santa Claus or Father Christmas. I remember my friend, sometimes mentor, sometimes nemesis, Morris Rosen, the founder of Jews for Jesus. And I always remember what he said and what he wrote. Santa Claus is a communist. He dresses in red and he only gives away things other people pay for. And he's a communist, but he's also a capitalist. He seduces children into thinking happiness comes from material things. It gets worse. Anybody reading the nativity narratives would realize we three kings of the Orient is a lyrically inaccurate Christmas carol. The Magi were not kings. Additionally, there were not three of them. It doesn't say how many there were. It just says that they bought three kinds of gifts. incense because Jesus was a priest, gold because he was a king, and they would bring myrrh because he would die for our sin. He'd be anointed for burial. 3 kinds of gifts: that he'd be a king, a sacrifice for sin, and a priest. Nothing about 3 kings. Nothing about any of that stuff. That does, how many of them there are? The whole thing is made up. But if you go to public stables, you'll see the shepherds on one side of the manger and the 3 kings on the other. Now, when we read the nativity narrative in the Gospels, the Magi came at a later point, after he was already born. How much later? We cannot be sure. But later. But they bought gifts. Oh, they bought gifts. And he's the patron saint of merchants. And he's the patron saint of toy makers. So it becomes about gifts, presents. Oh boy. In fact, in Jewish culture, much of what you see about having a feast that's focused on children takes place at the Feast of Esther, Purim. In December, corresponding roughly to the Hebrew or to the Jewish month of Kislev, in John chapter 10, verse 22, Jesus celebrated Hanukkah. The New Testament never says to celebrate his birth. We are told, rather, to celebrate his death and resurrection. This is my body broken for you. This is my blood poured out for the forgiveness of sins. Do this in remembrance of me. Remember my death and my resurrection, not my birth. His birth was both a happy and sad occasions. Gloria in excelsis Deo, glory to God in the highest. Yes, the angels sang that. But the prophecy of Simeon to Mary at the circumcision of Jesus told her right from the beginning, a sword will pierce your own soul. This child is appointed for the fall and rise of many. He's a sign who's going to be opposed. A sword will pierce your own soul. Mary would stand there when her son was being crucified, powerless to do anything. That's a very different perspective of Christmas, of the Nativity, than we have. The devil does not want us to look at what the scripture actually says. Now we know from Luke's Gospel, chapter 1, that the father of John the Baptist, Jesus' cousin, Zechariah, was from the Levitical line or division of Aviyah. We know that. And we also know that in verse 26, it was the 6th month the angel Gabriel was sent from God to a city in Galilee called Nazareth. And John the Baptist was 6 months older than his cousin Jesus. This would mean that Mary, the earthly mother of Christ, not Theotokos, not the mother of God, that Mary was like the daughters of Zelophehad in the Old Testament. When there was a marriage across tribal lines, the bride would take on the tribal identity of her husband. Hence, Mary was both a descendant of David, but a descendant of Aaron. She was a mixture of Levitical and Davidic from the tribe of Judah. Jesus' high priesthood, of course, comes from the order of Melchizedek. He was eternal. Nonetheless, the fact that the Messiah would be both a king of the Davidic line and a priest from the Aaronic line is demonstrated through the fact that his earthly mother was both Davidic and Aaronic. Many scholars believe, from what we know, I won't go into it now, it's too much of a diversion, from the division of Avia to the fact that she came at the 6-month point of the pregnancy gestation of her cousin Elizabeth, that this took place. And from this, given the fact that John was 6 months older than Jesus, the prophecies of Isaiah 7:14 took place in Kislev. Okay. Let's look. Chapter 7, verse 14 of Isaiah. Therefore, the Lord himself will give you a sign. A virgin, a Parthenos in the Septuagint, virgin, it can only mean virgin, will be with child and bear a son and call his name Emmanuel. When the Holy Spirit overshadowed Mary and Christ was incarnated inside of Mary, this seems, as best as we can calculate, to have happened at the month of Kislev, if you will, December. There is no evidence that Jesus was born in December. There is evidence that he may have been conceived in December. Meaning, with normal biological human gestation, he would have been born most likely in the month of Tishrei. Now, some people have, I think, stretched the evidence to try to say it was during the Feast of Tabernacles or something like this. Hag Sukkot is when the families had their meals and scripture readings in a booth. They dwelt in a booth, a sukkah. Jesus was put into a manger where oxen would eat straw and so forth. I'm skeptical of arguments that you can say it was this holiday or that holiday. But there is reason to believe, and now it could have been, but it was in the month of Tishrei, which is the month of Rosh Hashanah, originally the Feast of Trumpets. It was the month of Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, and the month of the Feast of Booths. It would seem Jesus was born most likely around then. Now, other people, astronomers, have tried to look for the cosmological history of asteroids for signs and things like this. We cannot be certain. We cannot even be certain of the year, although the year was not 1 AD, not 1 CE. It may have been 6. Some speculate it may have been 4. We can be somewhat confident that he was executed for our sin in 32 or 33 Anno Domini, Common Era. But birth, this we cannot say for sure what year. So, when I read the Christmas story, as people call it, I have no interest in Christmas. I have an interest in the Nativity. Now, as a caveat, whenever we touch on this subject, we point to Colossians 2, 16 to 18, and Romans 14, 14 and 5. Who are you to judge the servant of another? To his own master he stands or falls, and stand he will, his master will make him stand. One man esteems one day, one another. Let each be convinced in his own mind. Or Colossians 2, let no one be your judge in regard to a festival, a new moon or a Sabbath. These things are a shadow of what is to come. The substance belongs to Christ. I don't care if somebody observes the Nativity or not. But if they do observe the Nativity, leave Christmas out of it. Now, why do I think it's important not to observe Christmas or the Nativity, call it what you will, but to study it? Study it from Micah chapter 5, study it from Isaiah chapter 14, study it from Luke, study it from Matthew, the Nativity narratives. Why? Because it is not simply about the past, it is about the future. We've explained this before. The first deified emperor, Caesar Augustus, formerly Octavius, assigns a number to everyone in the known world he could in order to maintain economic control, financial control of the known world. Luke chapter 2. There are actually two censuses. This is the one that took place in the days of Quirinius. It came about in those days, a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that a census be taken of the inhabited earth. The number was not put on their hand or their forehead, but they were assigned a number. You had a deified emperor, a man worshipped as God, legally proclaimed to be God by the Roman Senate, for the purpose of maintaining financial and economic control of most of the known world. Assigned everybody a number. That is why Joseph and Mary had to come to the city of David to register, causing the prophecy of Micah 5:2 that the Messiah would be born there to be fulfilled. Well, the other villain is, of course, Herod the Great. He was an ethnic Arab, an Idumean, whose religion was Judaism for political conveniences, but whose citizenship and national loyalties were Roman. The Romans considered him to be a Roman. The Jews considered him to be a Jew, and the Arabs considered him to be an Arab. He's a major type of the Antichrist. So you've got two pictures of the Antichrist. Herod the Great corrupted the temple. He had the Roman fortress Antonia with its pagan ensigns and eagles towering over the house of God. But he took control of the Levitical priesthood. He had his own party called the Herodians, but he got control of the Sanhedrin and the Sadducees. Caiaphas and Annas and these people who killed Jesus, they were not Pharisees, they were Sadducees, even though they were Pharisees who aligned themselves temporarily with them against Jesus, but they hated each other. The Sadducees were Roman collaborators. He controlled the priesthood. He appointed the high priest. And using Ezekiel's vision of the millennial temple, he expands the temple, but he defiles the Temple Mount and calls himself King of the Jews. And he didn't want another king of the Jews named Jesus to be a threat to him. He was megalomaniac. He killed some of his own sons. He was paranoid about maintaining his position. As head of the Roman pantheon, Caesar Augustus used religion to get political power. Herod the Great, called the Great because he was a great builder, not because he was a great guy, he was a lousy guy. Herod used politics to get control of religion, of the temple, and of the priesthood. One uses politics to get religious power. The other uses religion to get political power. Two beasts, two wicked men, one from the earth and one from the sea. The sea being the nations of the Roman Empire around the Mediterranean, and the earth being from Israel. These two figures are key to understanding the Antichrist and false prophet. And understanding the nativity narrative, as I've explained before, is the key to understanding not only Revelation 12, but Revelation 13, the mark of the beast. In other words, the nativity, the first coming of Jesus, is a picture of his return. The wise men knew by the sign in the sky. What did Jesus say? Then they will see the sign of the appearing of the Son of Man in the sky. His first coming is a template, a shadow of his return. When we study the Nativity, we are not studying what did happen for the sake of understanding what did happen alone. We study the Nativity to understand what's going to happen. Now, this is a big subject in itself, and I'm in the process of beginning to write a book about it called Born in a Manger, Coming on a Cloud, tentatively. But these are important things. These are important things. The devil does not want us to understand these things. He does not want the so-called professing church to be ready for the return of Jesus. Take their eyes off Jesus, put it on St. Nicholas. Take their eyes off St. Nicholas, put it on Santa Claus. Take their eyes off the Lamb of God, put it on Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. When the two witnesses are martyred in Revelation 11, what are the people doing? They're celebrating. How do they celebrate it? They're giving gifts to each other. Oh boy. The whole thing is a setup. The whole thing's a setup. No wonder they have the wrong St. Nicholas. They have this imposter called Santa Claus. And so much of Christianity, so-called, the professing church, the apostate church, the Roman church, the Eastern Orthodox church, the liberal Protestant church, the World Council of Churches, they have a different Christ. I want the real one. We need the real one. The so-called nativity story is historically true, and it's a wonderful story to tell little children at this time of year in Sunday school. But for adult Christians, we should be understanding that we have to understand, among other things, the Nativity in order to understand the book of Revelation. We have to understand about Herod the Great and about Caesar Augustus to understand about the Antichrist and the false prophet and the census numbering the people to understand the number of the beast, etc., etc. The wise men knowing the sign in the sky, then they'll see the sign of the Son of Man, and a lot more. But the devil doesn't want that. No, he doesn't want us looking up for the sign of the coming of the Son of Man. He wants us looking up in the sky for somebody in a sled pulled by reindeer. Oh, my Lord. You've got Coca-Cola commercials, advertisements for a soft drink. You've got Hollywood movies like Miracle on 34th Street. You've got poems from England, was the night before Christmas. You've got all of these things totally redefining Christmas and its meaning. Totally. There's no Santa Claus. No such person. But there's a St. Nicholas. And we'll meet him someday. He was a faithful Christian, persecuted for his faith. That was St. Nicholas. And there were no three kings. There were Magi. And her name was not Mary, it was Miriam. Going to meet her too. The Nativity is a reality. Christmas is a diabolical myth. Nativity blessings to all of you in Jesus. Thank you so much for listening. Blessings from all of us